So everybody's been talking about it. What cost Hillary Clinton the election? My answer has been everything. So some say, oh, it's James Comey, the Russians, Bernie Sanders, perhaps maybe Hillary Clinton. That's not one that they list often in the mainstream media or among Democrats in Washington. Anyway, and we talk about how there was only 78,000 votes that swung the election in the three Rust Belt states, Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Michigan, right? And I said 78,000 votes in those three states, anything could have swung that. In the context of the number of votes in those states and the number of votes in the country, that's nothing. The weather could have swung the election. So now there's evidence that I was more right than I realized, but not necessarily in those states. We always forget about Florida. Florida's margin was also razor thin. So really interesting story out today in the Tampa Bay Times. They explained that a report released by state officials Wednesday showed more than 161,000 Florida voters who took part in the elections either at the polls or by mail didn't cast a valid vote for president. So that's interesting. What do they mean? Well, sometimes people left it blank. Now, they would vote on the other things in the election, so you knew they cared, they were real voters, and they wanted to vote for senator or maybe their state reps, etc., but they'd leave the presidential one blank. We're not talking about votes that were just cast in a wrong way. That's a different category. These are people who voted invalidly on purpose, whether they left it blank or filled in other names. So what are some of the other names that they filled in? Beyoncé, Tebow, Mickey Mouse, Thor. I mean, there's a huge selection here, but a lot of people voted for those folks. And then, of course, one more, Bernie Sanders. So now, one is not like the others, of course, but some folks were upset at Hillary Clinton for not reaching out to progressives. That's why I say, bottom line is, it's her fault. You couldn't excite people enough to fill out the presidential ballot. You couldn't excite enough of those Bernie Sanders voters to vote for you instead of Bernie Sanders. And in all of your hubris about, oh, we're going to win the election, I have a 98% chance of winning the election. She yelled at MSNBC executives when Mika Brzezinski once said she might not win the election. She's like, how dare you? Tell everyone I'm going to win. Well, then if they think they're going to win, you're going to win. Maybe they fill in Bernie Sanders, or maybe they leave it blank, or maybe they put in Mickey Mouse. So ultimately, it's definitely Hillary Clinton's fault, but it gives you a sense of how close the election was. So now if you're thinking, well, they probably do that in every election. They do. But it was much more so in this case. The rate of invalid votes for president in 2016, 1.69% overall, was more than double the rate it was in 2012 and 2008 when President Barack Obama won the state each time. So if she'd just gotten people excited enough so they didn't fill out goofy Spider-Man ballots, she could have won Florida. Because, now remember, invalid votes in Florida was 161,000. Now let's find out the vote difference between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump in Florida. Only 113,000 votes. So now not everyone who left it blank or filled out Thor was necessarily going to vote for Hillary Clinton. Some of them might have voted for Donald Trump. And yes, there was great disgust at the choices that we had in this election. But this election could have been won by Hillary Clinton in 1,000 different ways. But they were convinced they did not have to excite their base. They didn't need big voter turnout. They had fancy computer systems that told them that they had an unassailable demographic advantage. And besides, everyone they knew in Washington didn't like Donald Trump. Yeah, but they're not voting in Washington. That is not it. They're voting in Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, the relevant swing states. Those are the ones that matter. And they had hubris, and they did not reach out to their base. They didn't get anyone excited. And it turns out Mickey Mouse cost them the election. You're at the end of this clip, but you're not at the end of the Young Turks. If you become a member, you get the whole show, plus a whole nother show we shoot afterwards every single day called a postgame. And that is wilder. It's much more personal. You're going to want to check it out. tytnetwork.com/join.